Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my walkthrough for Chrono Trigger for Nintendo DS. This video covers the optional areas of the sewers in 2300 AD and the Arena of Ages, so because these are both optional things, you can totally just skip ahead to the next video if you want to continue on with the main quest, otherwise hang out with me and I'll show you how to get a bunch of cool things. Now, if you want to do the Arena of Ages, one thing I'd recommend is just whenever you're passing through the end of time, just check real quick and see if your monster came back from training. In my particular case, I just had a Specchio battle, so it was like no time investment at all. But a training typically takes about 10 minutes, by the way, and then that's real time, by the way, so you can totally like save and turn off your DS and then open it back up again in 15 minutes or whatever, and your monster will be back. But anyways, otherwise you can go off and do other things. But if you're just in the habit of stopping by the Arena of Ages and sending your monster, if your monster is back, have them go through one battle and then send them out for training again. You just do that every time. Then that way it's the cheapest way to invest not a lot of time, but have your monster upgrade with the rest of your party as you're progressing through the game. So if you want to do the Arena of Ages, that's what I'd recommend. Our next objective is to head to the sewers in 2300 AD. Now, to get there, you can either take Banger Dome and then go through Lab 16 to get over to where, like, Aris Dome is. The abandoned sewers is right next to that. And then otherwise, if you want to go the other way, you can go to Proto Dome, which I think is easier in my opinion. Then you just go through Lab 32, which is where you race against Johnny. And then this way, you can get through here real fast. The thing is, you just want to make sure you win, because if you lose, it'll make you go back the other way. So you can just hang out in the back, you can bonk against him, it doesn't really matter. I'm trying to get points anyways, as long as I'm here. But of course, I didn't do so well. I find that I just have like really bad luck most of the time, and occasionally I do really, really good, but most of the time I don't get many points. So once you reach the area in between Site 32 and Site 16, you'll find Aris Dome as well as the Abandoned Sewers. So the Abandoned Sewers is a totally optional area that you don't have to go to, but this eventually leads to an optional side quest. Right now we're going to work our way towards a Strength Capsule as well as getting an optional accessory, the Rage Band. Now this first area, to get through here, there is this little zigzag path you can take to avoid the enemies to get the goodies inside this chest. So you don't actually have to do this combat at all. I'm going to go ahead and do it. For the whole sewers, I'm going to show the paths to take so that you don't have to fight enemies if you don't want to. Although it's kind of like, if you're in the sewers, you're probably trying to kill everything anyways. Now as a comment for these particular enemies, the egg ooze, which is the little like clamshell looking things, those are very susceptible to magic. Meanwhile, everything here is susceptible to magic, I should say that first of all. But if you're going to use physical, then definitely on the guy in the water would be the way to go. So if you want to have Chrono not use magic, then instead using physical damage because he's a little more focused on that, then probably have him hit the Zora guys in the water. So most of the fights in the abandoned sewers can be avoided, however some of them are unavoidable, one of which is this little bridge right here. There's two Nereids/Dondragos, and they each have 138 life, which is not that much. They are more susceptible to magic. However, because your magic hits with the girls will do like over 100 damage each anyways, I think the best bet for these fights is to just have each girl use either Star Ice or Star Fire on one of the enemies, and then you can have Chrono go ahead and just finish them off with his regular attack, because he can go about every 1.5 turns of the girls anyways, so if you just use, one girl spell and one Chrono regular attack, you could be able to finish off each enemy that's here. Now, as an alternative for this, you can, of course, use Robo for this and use, like, Supersonic Spin with Chrono, and that would be a dual tech. It uses up quite a bit of MP, but that's one potential option for this point in the game. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't really kill them in one hit because it's all based off Robo's magic damage, and his magic is terrible. His magic stat is awful. So you'd have to do it at least twice to kill all the enemies here. So if there's a lot of enemies, that could be worth it, but for most of these fights, I really do think that this team composition with the girls is much more suitable. Also, Robo is a little bit higher level than these girls anyways. I want Marl to level up in particular because she's the lowest level on my party right now. Just so you know, characters that are not in your active party do still gain XP, and they actually do gain 100% of gained XP. The thing is that they don't gain XP towards the next level. So if they level up, then any remaining XP for that particular fight is wasted. So there's 0 XP towards their next level. Meanwhile, characters in your active party will always get 100% of the XP that you earned, if that makes sense. So they'll level up, but then they'll also get 138 XP towards their next level, and that's how that works. So Robo will steadily fall behind is what'll happen, and I'm doing that intentionally because I want to get him like a little bit closer in level range to the rest of my characters. Fire Whirl is such a good ability, like for like half the game or something like that. It's just really good. I mean, it'll one-shot many things in this game, and it's just great. So these enemies, for example, are weak to magic, so it just immediately changes it into a fire type attack, and it just makes it good. So as opposed to just Chrono's regular Cyclone. But honestly, the amount of MP you spend and stuff isn't that much anyway. For the amount of damage you get, it's just great. This whole area of the sewers, most of these fights can totally be avoided. I am showing all the fights just to get the extra XP, but also just to show. Another thing you can use too, if you're high enough levels, you can use Napalm Bomb. That's probably unlikely that you've unlocked at this point, but it is a potential option to do damage to enemies in an area. As a comment about that though, Napalm is not very good per, like, the amount of damage you get per mana spent is not very high, so it's not a very good ability in general, but it does do high damage. If you have the extra MP to spend, it is a good ability to use, but generally speaking, I don't really think it's worth it. Fire Whirl is just way better. So once you've made your way past all of the optional enemy encounters, you want to go up the ladder at the end of the path. This will lead back to the first floor, and at this point you'll see that in the wall there's like this little path right here. You want to go just a little bit south of it so you can walk through that little platform, and then over to the right you want to access the switch and then go all the way around to go through the door you just opened. This will then show a short cinematic with the comic relief frogs. Fun fact about these guys too, by the way, this particular enemy is never actually encountered in 2300 at all. In fact, this enemy is only seen in the DS remake in older time periods, actually, the oldest ones. So we're in the far future, and that's actually the exact opposite of where you can even find these enemies, but they're called King Frog, by the way. But yeah, kind of strange that we see them here because they shouldn't actually exist in this time period at all. So moving on, you want to go to the far north where you'll find a chest that contains the Rage Band. This is a pretty nice accessory. If you're going to throw it on somebody, I'd recommend putting it on Robo because he's the slowest speed character, and he also hits pretty hard, so if he's going to counterattack, it'd be really useful on him. Make sure to heal up all your characters real quick with Marl, and then we're going to continue on across this next bridge where we have a boss battle. So this fight is pretty straightforward. Sir Crawley only has two attacks. He has a attack where he'll say, "I'll shred you," or "I'm gonna mash you to goo," and when he says that out loud, then after a little bit, he's gonna run forward and attack one of your characters and reduce them down to 1 HP. That's what this attack does. Now, what you want to do is you want to keep a healer ready to heal that person up and get him up above like 70 HP, because his other attack is a double hand slap, which does like 40 to 60 damage, so if you are still at 1 HP, you could die really quickly. Just as long as you heal him up above 1, that's all you really need to do for this entire boss battle. Meanwhile, the other two characters, you can just focus on single targeting him down. Just try to keep one of your healers ready to heal at all times. So whatever that combination ends up being, he really does not have that much HP. His resistances are actually pretty high. If anything, though, he's more resistant to physical damage. He's a little bit more susceptible to magic damage in particular. However, he is highly vulnerable to shadow. Now, at this point in the game, we don't actually have a lot of characters that can even do shadow damage. We have Robo's lasers, but those are more suited to, like, hitting all the enemies on the screen. It's not really suited to hitting a single target, plus the amount of damage it does is very low, so I would recommend at that point, if you're going to have Robo in your party, just use his regular attack or use, like, Robo Tackle or something. But anyways, otherwise, though, the other shadow attack we have that a lot of people don't know is Antipode Bomb, which is Starfire plus Star Ice. It actually makes a shadow attack, and it does high damage. But because this boss in particular is highly susceptible to shadow, and he's more vulnerable to magic damage in general, it will take out almost all of his HP in one hit. So just follow up with one hit with Chrono, and boom, he's dead with just one turn with all of our characters, which is ridiculous. Oh my goodness. So that was easy. But yeah, I think it's kind of fun, though. If you're actually paying attention to like what the bestiary says for various characters, it makes it pretty obvious what the correct choice, or like, yeah, if you're paying attention to the tooltips, like, because I noticed that Antipode Bomb was Shadow, it's like, we actually do have a way of like taking advantage of this, you know? I think it's really cool. It's like, the game rewards you for actually paying attention to the tooltips, I guess, and I think that's pretty neat. Not that that fight is all that hard to begin with anyway, but it's also kind of funny because he's like, huh? What? And we just, boom, and he's dead. Just makes me laugh. Anyways, so for this next battle, this battle takes place if you walk in the middle of the room. But you can avoid this fight by just walking around the outside of the wall, which is what I showed first. Again, what I'm doing is I'm showing how to avoid all these fights, but I'm also showing how to defeat them as well. Again, for this particular fight, you want to go ahead and hit the eggs with a magic attack first, and meanwhile, these Nereids / Dundragos, I think is what they're called, are pretty easy to hit with either one, either physical or magical. So I know this area feels pretty cakewalk, but the reason for that is because we're much higher level than what is necessarily intended. They try to design this dungeon so that it's like pretty easy if you come back later because you have magic now. But if you come here before that, like you come here on your way to the factory, so when you get to Aristome, it's right there next to it, before you ever race against Johnny, our characters at that point are only level like 5 or 6, so they're pretty low, and we don't even have any magic at that point. So if you decide to tackle this at that point, you would get the Thunderblade up ahead, which is an upgrade for Chrono, which is awesome. We get one of those in the factory up ahead. So I actually already went to the factory first. But if you were here at that point, this area is actually pretty rough, and the enemies each take significantly more turns to defeat, so that is kind of rough. So yeah, grab the Bolt Sword / Thunderblade, and then access this nearby switch, which creates 2 bridges actually, and makes a shortcut back to the earlier portions of the sewers. A lot of these fights will not reappear if you've already completed them once, so we can actually just walk through here pretty easily. Next thing we're going to do is, now that we're on the other side, is go to Death Peak. Now, we're not actually supposed to be here yet, and we can't really traverse it very well. However, if you go over to the right side, you'll find a strength capsule, which you can barely reach before the wind blows us down. Now, before heading on, you can stop by Keeper Dome if you want to. When we were in Eris Dome before, there were some people there that said that if you managed to go through the sewers, you could meet up with an old dude over here who was crazy. So if you want to see the crazy old man, you can. Everything he says doesn't really make sense right now, although it is kind of foreshadowing for events that will take place later in the game. So just bear that in mind. It's all kind of like lore stuff, but we will come back here and speak with this guy at a later time. So that's all great, and so you can talk with him if you want to. When you're done messing around here, you just want to work your way back through the sewers, and then work your way towards either Banger Dome and access that gate, which I'd recommend if you haven't done that yet, or go all the way back to Protodome. Protodome is faster, you can get there easier. Also, if you are still trying to level up your characters a little bit to play catch-up like I am, then it might make more sense to go through Lab 16 / Site 16 so we can get some more XP along the way. So once you return to the sewers, you can just use the shortcuts we created earlier. If you haven't done that yet, you just want to hit the switch that's on the wall right here. This will create a bridge right there, as well as another one a little bit further to the north right here. And this way you can just run all the way through and not have to face any enemy encounters at all. So it's really fast, actually, once you cleared it out the first time. But yeah, like I was explaining earlier, if you went to the abandoned sewers before we unlocked magic, then you would have only had, like, flamethrowers. That's your only magic damage. Otherwise, you're basically relying on Chrono's auto attack to kill everything because he's the highest damage person in your party at that point. So it's pretty rough because all those enemies are resistant to physical, so it's just kind of like you have a really low damage magic ability and then that's it. That's like all you have for damage otherwise. So as I explained in the last video, if you have not gone back to Banger Dome yet, when you do it this time and go through the gate, this will also unlock the gate to Guardia Forest 1000 AD, which is super nice. So like I was saying, whenever you come to the end of time, you should just go ahead and save and heal at the nearby sparklies as long as we're passing through before we move on, just because they don't really have save points very often. In fact, I think the last time I saved was here at the end of time, so you should do that as long as we're here. And also, if you're playing on the DS Remake, you can optionally go to the Arena of Ages. This is in the Remake only, and training your monster takes about 10 minutes every time, so because I did that little side quest and went to the sewers, my monster has now come back from training. So at this point in the walkthrough, I decided to spend quite a bit of time here, so I actually ended up training my monster and getting it up to max stats for everything. Right now, I trained over and over and over again, and I recorded all of that. So I actually have hours of footage of this point in the walkthrough where I just stayed at the Arena of Ages for days. I literally just like muted my DS and just left it recording basically, and then just kept, then I just worked on other projects, and then I'd turn the volume on real quick, and then I'd do some training real quick with it, and then I'd mute it again, and I'd go back to working on my other projects. So that's what I did. So I have hours and hours and hours of footage of the Arena of Ages right now at this point in the walkthrough, and I got my monster up super, super strong. Now that all being said, I feel like now that I have all this raw footage of me experimenting and trying different things, I can recommend better strategies for you that are a little bit faster, so you're not wasting as much time here as I did. So first of all, what are the prizes? Why are we even doing this? The reasoning is so that we can get a bunch of really rare accessories and really rare armor pieces by endgame. But for early game, basically the most valuable thing is actually capsules / tabs for increasing your strength, magic, and speed. And that's very valuable, and that would be what you can get early game. Although by the end of the game, you can actually farm them forever and infinitely, and that's like super easy actually. So by the end of the game, you'll be able to farm a lot of the items that you're working towards here at the Arena of Ages anyway, so just something to keep in mind. There's also some really rare accessories you can get, such as the Gold Stud, which will reduce MP cost by 75%. You can get those here, however, that's only at the end of the game, so it's just something to be aware of. However, in order to do that, you have to beef up your monster and get it really, really strong and beef up its stats. Now, in order to do so, you do have to spend gold. Now, the cheapest point in the game for you to invest money into your monster and get it powerful is right now. Like, you can do it for like 1/1000th of the cost by doing it right now at this point in the walkthrough. So it's very much to your advantage to beef up your monster right now if you're going to pursue this. So in order to make your monster stronger, you send them off to training, you give them an item, you send them to a time period, they go off to train. After 10 minutes, they come back and you can check on them and you will see their stat changes, and then you can do it again if you want to. Now, if you train multiple times in a row, you will actually lose trust. In particular is the bad thing that'll happen. So in order to keep your trust stat from going down, what you have to do is you just go battle once. So all you have to do is battle once or twice, and then go to training. So you just alternate back and forth. So whenever your monster comes back from training, throw him in a battle, and then after that, send him off for training, and you'll be good to go, and that way you will not lose trust. So we have various time periods we can send them to, which have various pros and cons. We also have different items we can equip on them that are consumed and also boost their stats. So what are good combinations that are efficient, that are good overall? First of all, just a quick concept for you to understand is when you send them to train, you will overall gain more stats than you lose. Like you will gain a total of 20 stats, and you will lose a total of like 6 stats. So you do lose some, you gain some, you lose some, but overall you are overall profiting. Training is always good, unless you are maxed out on a stat. Then it's like you need to start optimizing a little bit more. But one quick concept to know is if you can supplement, you use the item that's the opposite of the area you're sending them to. So for example, if you send them to Middle Ages, then you will lose magic defense. So if you send them to an offensive area, but you give them a defensive item, you will prevent them from losing stats. Does that make sense? So if you can neutralize the deficits with your item choice, you can then guarantee that you keep a nice, well-rounded amount of stats so that you're not so bad things don't happen. One other thing to be aware of slightly is that there is also some stat variants that happen that are based on that the developers have implemented. That's kind of like happens on the back end that you have no influence over. It has nothing to do with the time periods of the items that you choose. It just happens on its own. That's things like the next training you go to will give you 6+ to speed. And that'll happen regardless of what you do. So then the next one after that will be like, +3 to stamina and -2 to magic defense. And the next one will be like -3 to evasion and +6 to strength, like that. So that's based on the number of trainings you have had. It has nothing to do with what you have no influence over that. So just be aware of that some variants are happening, and it goes through a cycle, and once it gets to the end of the cycle, it repeats. So it's just this stat change that's happening all the time on the back end. And the developers put that in, I'm assuming it's to give it like a little bit more of a feeling like so there's some random chance and stuff like that. It's not random at all. It's actually totally handcrafted. But just something to be aware of when you're looking at the numbers when your monster comes back, just be aware of those variants as well. So what are the combinations of time periods that we have available to us right now, because we only have 3, and items that we can do right now at this point in the game? So I have 3 recommendations for you. The first one is Present plus Slops. What this will do is it boosts your max HP, which that is the hardest stat to gain, actually. It's the one that takes the longest, takes the most number of trainings. So by focusing on max HP early on, that's great. Like I explained earlier, you get you overall gain stats. You gain more stats than you lose. So if you focus on HP, you're steadily gaining stats, and there's a couple stats that kind of lag behind. One of those in particular is magic defense. Your magic defense stays really low, but it honestly doesn't really matter that much. Like seriously, if you have enough HP, it doesn't matter how much damage they're doing anyways, because they're like, ooh, bam, 200 damage, and you're like, guess what, my 7,000 HP didn't even feel that. Like, it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter that your magic defense is going down, so don't worry about it too much. So Slops plus Present is a good thing. Next recommendation is Middle Ages plus a shield cloak. And what this will do is it gives you a pretty decent amount of stats overall. It beefs up your strength stat in particular, which is really nice for early on because you can just you can practically one-shot things. You do a critical strike and you do like 3,000 damage, like it's just disgusting. So boosting your strength is amazing. But adding the shield cloak will guarantee that you get a good amount of defensive stats too, so those don't go down. In particular, this will boost your magic defense. So if you're worried about your magic defense, Middle Ages plus shield cloak will take care of it. It'll boost everything. Just a good balance of overall stats. It's great. Kind of expensive though. My third recommendation would be, because both of those 2 combinations I gave you so far are going to be really bad for your accuracy, so you're going to start missing. So if you want to boost your accuracy, then, and I would do this kind of later, this would be kind of the lowest priority in my opinion, would be go to Future, which boosts your stamina, which is already maxed out at this point probably, and your accuracy. So this will boost your accuracy, which is great, but you combine it with a magic item, because the Future you actually lose magic is the other big deficit of that. So with any of your magic items, any of those elemental weapons, so the Flame Claw, the Duskwing, or whatever it's called, it's any of those, and then this will potentially learn you techs. The reason I'm doing it is so that you don't lose a whole bunch of magic. You can sometimes lose like 8 magic in one turn, and it's just awful. So those magic items will counteract that deficit. So if you want to boost your stats early and get your monster super awesome with the least amount of trainings and the least amount of gold invested in it, those are the combinations that I would recommend. So one more quick tip for you is never spend items in combat. It's just bad until late in the game. Once you finally get down to like tier 6 and you're at the end of the game and you have a bunch of gold, yeah, go for it. Like, you can go ahead and spend items at that point. But until then, never spend items in combat. Instead, you want to throw all that gold at training. So for example, let's say you're fighting a boss and you're like, oh man, I'm losing. So you use a shield cloak to boost your defenses, right? That all sounds good on paper. The problem is that you spent 400 gold. You purchased that puppy for 400 gold. Now, that 400 gold could be spent on training instead, either as a shield cloak or as 4 slops. Now, if you buy 4 slops for 100 gold apiece, and then you train 4 times with that, you get an average of like 20 stats gained for that. So, if you train 4 times with 4 slops for 400 gold, you got 80 stats. 80 of them. Like, you understand like how much more of a benefit that is? Like, so what if you lose that combat against that boss? It doesn't matter. You get the constellation prize and you can sell that to make back the money that you lost anyway. So you break even. And then you spend that 400 gold on slops and now you just gained 80 stats. And then the next time you fight that boss, you just mow him over. Like, I can't even express like how much better it is to throw it into training. Just don't spend items in combat. Just don't do it until at the end of the game. All right, so next for battling, we have all these different tiers to choose from. Which one should you choose? Now, the thing to realize is that the higher tier you go, then the better weapons, armor, and accessories you will find. However, a lot of those accessories don't actually upgrade to the next like awesome tier until like tier 4, honestly, is when they start actually swapping out for something good. One of the exceptions to that is tier 3 has a silver stud in there, and I think that's worthwhile, but other than that, tier 2 is worthless. Tier 1 is just better overall. It's way less money, but you gain a lot of the same things. There's also rare items, and that is actually the same like percentage chance and everything for every tier. So you have the same chance of getting a strength capsule in tier 3 as you do as tier 1. So there's no reason, if you're trying to get a bunch of capsules, there's no reason not to do it in tier 1 because it's just way cheaper. We have to fight various bosses, and there's different bosses for each tier. Once you've completed enough bosses, or once you've completed the bosses of certain tiers, and you've also completed far enough in the main storyline of the game, then you will unlock the next tiers after that. So we don't even have access to tier 4 right now, and we can't access it right now until we progress with the main story a little bit further. Also, just so you know, once you defeat the lower tier bosses, you don't actually see them again. When it comes time to fight a boss in lower tiers, it actually pits you off against the higher tier bosses, so it just progressively upgrades you to the next one that's harder. And so you're always facing the most recent, like, toughest, newest boss is what happens every time you face a boss, regardless of which tier you're in. So that all being said, which tier makes the most sense? Which is the most economical? Which one will give you the most strength? Which one gives you the best items? And the answer is tier 1, because you fight all the tier 2, tier 3 bosses in tier 1. You get all the strength caps, strength magic, and speed capsules / tabs in tier 1, and you get the most bang for your buck. Like, you only spend 100 gold, and the items that are in there sell for a significantly higher ratio than what you spent. So you actually get more return on investment in that tier. The bosses in particular are ridiculous because you're only paying 100 gold, but you're getting the tier 3 loot table because you're fighting that boss, even though you're in a tier 1. It's funny. So anyways, it's still just the best choice. So like I say, the only real incentive to do tier 3 would be to get some of those accessories, in particular like the power scarf, which is +4 power, the magic scarf, which is +4 to magic, or the silver stud, which reduces MP cost by 50%. Those would be the main incentives for why you'd want to do tier 3, but those are kind of rare anyway, so you may or may not see that. So if those things are not a consideration for you, then tier 1 is the correct choice, because like I was saying before, the rare loot table is the same for all the different tiers. Also, another thing to consider is that bosses, you have a much higher chance of getting stuff in the rare loot table. Bosses have a much higher chance for that to happen. So what you can do is, because how bosses work is you do like 2 or 3 battles in a row, and the next time you battle will be a boss. So you do tier 1 like 2 times, whatever, then you save, then you do it again, then you save, and you do it again, and you save, and then the next time it'll be a boss. And then what you do is you see what you kill the boss, you see what the reward is. If the reward is garbage, like for example, one of the things in the rare loot table is a mop, which sells for 1 gold. It's just a joke item, it's just there to be annoying. So if you win the mop, you just restart your console, and then you load your game, and now you're back in the Arena of Ages, you're back at the boss, and so you just fight again, and then you kill him, and you see what you get this time. So as long as your item isn't total garbage, then you can keep it. But you have a very high chance to get capsules / tabs, or to get the mirrors, or to get like the workman's wallet or something, and I think you can even get the silver stud from the bosses as well. So anyways, just know that the bosses have a much higher chance. They do not give you like the low tier stuff at all, they only give you the rare stuff, and so you have a much higher chance of getting those kind of items. The only other thing worth commenting on is the evolution of your monster. It will steadily upgrade, and they call it a class change, but when it changes classes, it upgrades to a new type of monster, and its stats go up quite a bit too, in particular for health. Its health starts going up amazingly, like you gain 1,000 HP or more, so it's a pretty beefy upgrade. But anyways, that's super nice, and I think that you are limited by the number of tier changes you can have for your class evolutions is based on how many tiers you currently have unlocked, and that's based on your progress through the main story. So as you progress with the main quest for the main storyline, you will steadily unlock more forms for your monster. So just so you know. And that actually just happens automatically, although you can also use the, I think it's called a Feral Claw, is an item that you can use to like kind of encourage or force an upgrade with your monster. So anyway, no matter which tier you end up deciding to stick with, you will end up with a bazillion accessories, because that's just the nature of this. If you hang out in tier 1 like I'm recommending, you will have enough ribbons to form a cloth afro, and that's a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, you cannot sell accessories, which is a real bummer. I wish there was a cheat or something I could do to just delete them or throw them away, or I don't know, just something. But yeah, we're stuck with them, which is really annoying. It just means you have to scroll through them every time. So yeah, that's my recommendation, is train with either, you know, send your guy off with the present, with slops, with Middle Ages, with Shield Cloak, or future with a magic item, and then alternate with a tier 1 battle in between every training. Once your stats are really high, then you can focus on tier 1 training a bunch of times, just save and battle, save and battle, save and battle. And once you see a boss, if your loot is garbage, then restart your console, load your game, and fight the boss again. And just keep doing that over and over again until you get something worthwhile. And that is probably the best way to get the best loot overall. And that's all in tier 1. The only reason to do tier 3 would be to get some of the other accessories, and unfortunately we don't have a way to sell accessories. You'll just end up with pages and pages of them, which is sad. So like I said, tier 1 has the best return on investment, so by doing all this stat gains and stuff like that right now at this point in the game, we're beefed up and we're ready for the final tiers of the game, but we did not invest a lot of money. In fact, you either break even or you even gain money. Like some of those boss battles, some of the items sell for 10,000. So if you do that right now, you make so much money that it's okay. Like, it doesn't matter. Meanwhile, later on, you're losing a lot of money if your lowest tier is tier 4. It's just as kind of awful. Or if you're doing tier 6 costs 10,000 every time. It's just really expensive. So after 2 days, this is the stats that are on my monster. Again, I actually accomplished that basically halfway through the first day. The stats actually maxed out really fast. The remaining stats are kind of hard for me to get right now with the time periods I have available to me, in particular that magic defense. Once I gain access to the magic time period, it won't be that big a deal, so I'm not worried about it at all. But for early game, I think this was really awesome and that was amazing. So next I'm just going to focus on HP, which I wish I had like allocated that time a little bit differently. If I were to redo it now, I could be more efficient with it. Anyways, here's of all the stuff I gained. So as far as armor and stuff like that, I got a bunch of items. In particular, titanium vests are things that I got from doing tier 3. I also got a power scarf, which is +4 to strength, so it's just a little bit more damage for Chrono. I also got additional speed belts, and I also got a Porian Barrette. We'll be able to purchase those soon. The speed belt is a little bit extra, but I think that speed is one of the best stats for all my characters. So I have multiple speed belts, multiple Porian Barrettes. I also got workman wallets, and what this does is it reduces XP. It makes it so that this character does not gain XP if he's not in my party. So this will make it so my other characters can catch up. It's just to bring my characters a little bit closer together. I'm actually doing that in particular for Specchio. I also gained tons of ethers. The ethers in particular you can sell for lots of gold. Elixir also sells for 10,000. It's a very rare item, but you can sell that to make some extra gold, and I get these from boss battles. But yeah, tons of ethers, tons of mid potions. I earned 4 strength capsules here, and 6 magic capsules, and 6 speed capsules, which boost stats on all my characters. The speed capsules is definitely the most powerful of the different things here. So I got tons of accessories. Most of them are tier 1 accessories, although I did spend time in all of the different tiers. I kind of regret that now. But in particular, I got tons and tons of ribbons. I can't drop any of these accessories, which is sad. Third eyes are okay. It doubles your evasion. Better on characters that have really high evasion chance. As far as other items that are kind of cool, Silver Earring is kind of garbage. It's best off on characters with high HP. So basically, Robo would be the best one. Silver Stud is amazing. In particular, it's good for farming stuff, and I'll show more what I mean by that in the next couple videos. The Workman's Wallet will reduce XP that characters have, and that is very useful for evening out your character XP. I think that's particularly useful for making sure that Specchio stays manageable, and I'll show what I mean by that later. I actually have one of these on Robo right now to keep his level low. I also got the Uranium Mirror. This is one of the super rare items that is only available here in the Arena of Ages. This is a auto counterattack that is only usable by Chrono as long as enemies do not use a light ability. However, you can also get the Rage Band here, and it's just better. It's literally activates twice as often, and you can use it on everybody. Like, why even have the mirrors garbage? I don't know. So if you're trying to 100%, that's going to be the hardest thing to get here is all the mirrors and the New Arcana. New Arcana is by far the most difficult thing to get, and that would be the thing that's going to make all you speedrunners sad. So next I'm going to go ahead and apply these speed capsules. What I decided to do is throw them on my slowest characters. I just decided to put 2 on everybody. So I put 2 speed on Luca, and now I'm putting 2 speed on Robo and Marl. And my reasoning for that is I decided I wanted to boost my healer a little bit because she's going to be used on like all the boss battles. So this actually brings her up to 10 speed, but I also have a speed belt on her, which is +2 speed. So she actually has the same speed of Chrono, which I actually thought was really awesome. This was super cool. And I'll talk more about this later, but it's amazing. So next I'm throwing all of my magic capsules on Marl, and the reason for this is to increase her magic damage, but more importantly to increase her healing, because she's my dedicated healer for most of the boss battles in the game. So I'm going to give her this batch of them, and I'll save my other magic capsules for other characters. But yeah, this just makes her healing like a little bit more viable, especially even Aura. It increases it by like a flat 40, which is pretty nice. Next, I'm throwing all my strength on Chrono. He's like stuck in slot for most of the game anyways, and he's like one of my highest physical damage dealers anyways, so just boosting it a little bit further is just kind of nice for right now. So anyways, those are probably the biggest things, biggest changes, differences that I acquired here. Those are the biggest upgrades. That concludes the Arena of Ages after 2 days. Was it overpowered? Kind of. Was it worth it? I don't know. Oh, that's not a good sign. Whew, so after 2 videos of just like optional collection, we're finally ready to continue on with the main quest. So be sure to save, head over to the gates, and inspect the one for Medina Village 1000 AD to continue on with the main storyline. So that's actually the end of this video. If you guys found this helpful, be sure to throw a like on it, subscribe, and check out my other playlists for more content just like this. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.